They say love can find you anywhere. In a cafe, at a bus stop, even in the middle of a storm. But for Markus Steiner, love found him beneath the waves, quite literally on the sunlit coast of Diani, Kenya. Markus was 42, a tall, broad-shouldered German, with a laugh that came rarely but sincerely. After 2 decades working in Berlin's cold corporate jungle, he traded his suits for swim shorts and spreadsheets for sunsets. He'd always loved diving and kitesurfing. So he decided, why not chase the wind where it's warm? And that's how he ended up in Diani, a place where palm trees swayed like they were dancing to reggae, and the ocean had a color so blue it could break your heart. A few kilometers from Markus's beach cottage lived Amani, a Kenyan girl with skin kissed by the sun and eyes brighter than the Indian Ocean itself. She worked at a small beach cafe by day, serving coconuts and smiles, and spent her evenings chasing waves on a borrowed surfboard that was older than she was. Markus first noticed her when she crashed spectacularly into the water 3 times in a row. But instead of quitting, she laughed, flipped her braids back, and shouted, "I'm just warming up." That laugh caught Markus's heart before he even realized it. One lazy afternoon, as the tide rolled in and the horizon melted into gold, Markus spotted her again, the girl with the fearless smile and sunlit skin. Amani stood at a distance, barefoot in the sand, watching a group of tourists getting ready to dive. Her head tilted slightly, eyes sparkling with that unmistakable look of curiosity, the kind of look people get before they do something wonderfully stupid or wonderfully brave. Markus noticed how she leaned forward every time someone adjusted their diving gear, almost as if her body was begging to join in. He smiled. He'd seen that look before in mirrors, years ago, before adventure became his middle name. He approached, towel slung over his shoulder, his German accent thick enough to slice bread. "Would you like to try?" he asked softly. Amani blinked, looking behind her, then back at him. "You mean me?" He chuckled, scratching his neck. "Yes, you look like you belong to the sea." She laughed, shaking her head. "Belong? The sea throws me off my board every day. It doesn't like me very much." Markus grinned. "Then maybe it's time you two made peace." Something in his voice, half teasing, half sincere, made her curious. So when he offered his hand, she hesitated only a second before taking it. The next morning, she showed up late, of course wearing an oversized t-shirt, a bright orange headscarf, and sandals that had clearly seen better days. Markus, with his German obsession for punctuality, checked his watch dramatically. "You are 22 minutes late." Amani shrugged. "African time," she said, flashing a grin. "The ocean isn't going anywhere, is it?" Markus sighed. "We will need to work on your timing. And maybe your swimming." The first lesson was, well, chaos. She put her mask on upside down, tried to breathe through the wrong tube, and kicked up enough sand to bury a crab colony. At one point, Markus surfaced, coughing with laughter. "Amani, you're supposed to dive under the waves, not wrestle them," she spluttered, wiping her face. "The sea started it." By the end of the day, neither could stop laughing. Markus couldn't remember the last time he'd smiled that much. Days turned into weeks. Amani learned fast, frighteningly fast. Her fear gave way to fascination, then freedom. She moved like she'd been born underwater, her body weightless, her braids floating behind her like a crown of seaweed. Markus watched her through the blue haze of the sea, and sometimes forgot to breathe himself. He admired how she looked at everything, wide-eyed at a clownfish, reverent at the coral gardens, bursting with laughter when a curious turtle swam by. One afternoon, she surfaced beside him, water dripping down her cheeks, and shouted, "Markus, I saw a fish with lips like yours." He raised an eyebrow. "Then it must be very handsome." She splashed him. "Handsome? No! It looked confused." They both laughed, their voices echoing across the quiet lagoon. It didn't take long before word spread along the beach. Tour guides, fishermen, and curious locals began calling her the Mermaid of Diani. Amani rolled her eyes at the nickname, but secretly, she loved it. She started teaching other local kids to swim after lessons, turning Marcus's small training sessions into mini events full of laughter and splashing. Markus would stand at a distance, arms crossed, watching her enthusiasm ripple through the crowd. He'd mutter to himself in German. She could make the ocean laugh if she wanted. In the evenings, after lessons, they'd sit by the water's edge, sharing coconuts and stories. Amani would tell him about her village, her dreams, and the first time she saw the ocean as a little girl. Markus would tell her about snow which she didn't believe existed. Snow? You mean frozen rain? Yes. So your sky gets a cold too? He burst out laughing, shaking his head. Something like that. The connection between them grew deeper, as deep as the ocean they shared. There were no grand declarations yet, no promises, just quiet understanding, gentle teasing, and the feeling that something extraordinary was happening slowly, like the tide coming in. And so, the German wanderer and the African dreamer found each other not in a bar, not in a city, but somewhere between the sunlight and the sea. He taught her how to dive. She taught him how to live. And both of them, without realizing, were already sinking into love. As the weeks rolled by, Markus and Amani became inseparable, like sunscreen and sand, always together, always stuck to each other in one way or another. Every morning, the German's voice could be heard echoing down the beach. "Amani, you are late again." And every morning, Amani would shout back, laughing, "I'm not late. I'm African early." Markus quickly learned that African early was a mystical time zone that existed only in Diani, somewhere between now and whenever she felt like it. Still, he couldn't stay mad. She arrived each day with that same fearless smile, ready to dive, fall, laugh, and try again. Markus was a patient teacher most of the time, but Amani had a way of turning every serious diving session into a comedy show. One day, while explaining the diving hand signals, Markus said, "This means okay. This means I have a problem." Is back does it? Amani nodded earnestly. But the moment they went underwater, she used the problem signal every 2 minutes. Markus surfaced, panicking. "What is wrong? Are you okay?" She giggled, pulling off her mask. "Nothing. I just like how serious you look every time I do this." Markus groaned, half exasperated, half in love. "You are going to give me a heart attack before we even finish lesson 3. But he couldn't deny it. She made the ocean come alive again for him. Every bubble felt lighter, every dive brighter. When they weren't diving, Markus taught Amani how to kite surf, which, in theory, sounded romantic. In practice, it was a disaster. On her first attempt, she lost control, the kite pulling her like a rag doll across the sand while Markus chased after her yelling in German. "Pull left! No left! That is not left, Amani!" She screamed. "I'm going whichever way the wind loves me." Moments later, she crashed straight into a coconut stand, scattering fruits everywhere. The beach crowd went silent, until Amani raised a coconut triumphantly and shouted, "Free juice for everyone!" Even Markus couldn't help it. He laughed until his stomach hurt. At night, they'd sit by a bonfire near the beach, eating roasted maize and swapping stories. Markus told her about snow, trains that arrived exactly on time, and sausages that were considered national treasures. Amani told him about her grandmother's coconut soup, village weddings that lasted 3 days, and how goats sometimes got drunk on fermented mangoes. He'd listen, wide-eyed. Goats? Drunk? Completely. You should see them trying to climb trees after. They'd both burst into laughter until tears rolled down their faces. Despite their differences, the accents, the customs, the pace of life, they found comfort in how natural everything felt between them. No pretenses, no pressure, just ocean breeze and laughter. By now, everyone on Diani Beach knew them. Tourists called them the diving duo. Locals whispered, the Mzungu and the mermaid. And of course, the gossip came because no love story in Africa is complete without a little drama. Some locals muttered that Markus was just another foreigner passing through, and when Markus's friends in Germany saw photos of him in flip-flops teaching kitesurfing, they emailed him things like, "Mate, are you okay? You look like you've joined a cult of coconuts." Markus laughed it off. He didn't care what they thought, because for the first time in years, he was genuinely happy. Amani teased him about it. "So, you left Germany for this?" "For peace," he replied. "And maybe for you." She rolled her eyes. "You are learning to flirt, eh? Not bad for a German." Then, one evening, the sky turned gray. The wind picked up. The sea began to roar. A storm was coming. They rushed to secure their kites, tanks, and boards before the rain hit. But a gust of wind tore one of the kites loose, sending it flying toward the open sea. Before Markus could react, Amani sprinted after it barefoot, wild, fearless as always. "Wait!" Markus shouted, but the wind swallowed his voice. The waves rose, crashing over her as she tried to grab the kite line. Markus didn't think he just dove in. The sea was chaos, waves pounding, salt stinging, the current pulling hard. He caught her arm just as she slipped under, dragging her back to shore with every ounce of strength he had. When they collapsed on the sand, coughing and gasping, she turned to him with a trembling smile. "You would have risked your life for me?" Markus, still panting, brushed her wet hair from her face. "You already have my life, Amani." She stared at him for a long second, then laughed weakly. "That's the most romantic and most stupid thing I've ever heard." They both burst into laughter, still shaking, still soaked, but suddenly aware that something deeper than friendship had taken hold. The storm passed, leaving behind a rainbow stretched over the sea. And under that rainbow, Markus finally told her what he'd been afraid to say. "Amani, I think I've fallen in love with you." She looked at him for a long time, then grinned mischievously. "Are you sure it's not just a sunburn?" He laughed, shaking his head. "No, this one doesn't fade." She chuckled softly, her eyes glistening. "Then I guess we both need sunscreen, because I feel it too." And there, as the waves whispered against the shore, the German man and the Kenyan girl sealed their love with laughter, salt water, and a promise that even the sea couldn't wash away. Weeks later, they began building their dream, a beach house and a dive school, side by side. Markus handled the blueprints with German precision, while Amani handled the workers with Kenyan charm. "Markus wants the window exactly here," she'd say. "If he complains, just tell him the wind decided otherwise." When it was done, it was perfect white walls, palm roofs, and a wide terrace facing the sunrise. They named it Bahari Breeze, the sea's whisper. From there, they taught travelers, kids, and couples how to dive, surf, and sometimes fall in love. They came from two different worlds, one of snow, one of sand. But the ocean, with its wild heart and endless rhythm, found a way to bring them together. He taught her to dive. She taught him to fly. And together, they learned to love. So if you ever walk along Diani Beach and see two figures laughing under the sun, one pale as sea foam, the other glowing like sunset, you'll know their story. The German who came for the waves and found his heart beneath them.